So top brass at YouTube insists that Google-owned platform is working to be a better content moderator because it's good for business. The company announced this week that it now has 2 million content creators on payroll, and they're focusing on ensuring that, quote, those who play by the rules are rewarded. Robbie Suave, senior editor at Reason and the author of Tech Panic, Why We Shouldn't Fear Facebook and the Future, joins us now for Team Rising to discuss. Robbie, welcome to the show. I have a hard time believing that this is actually good for business to be demonetizing and deplatforming people. It seems like more people they have on the platform, the more money they make. What do you think of this?
Yeah, the issue for platforms like YouTube, Facebook, et cetera, is they're trying really hard to avoid greater government regulation. And the thing right now that irritates the people in the Biden administration, the people in power, the mainstream media, is the existence of so-called misinformation on the platforms. Now, I have a lot of quibbles with how the label misinformation gets wielded, and I think pressuring these companies to take down more content is in general a bad strategy. But when they say they love doing content moderation, they want to do more content moderation, they're winking at the government saying, look, we're handling this. Please don't come in and destroy our business because you don't like that occasionally there's content about coronavirus that you might not agree with there. So that's what they're trying to say. They're doing it, and then it's good for business. They've got it under control, even though they'd probably rather not do it. And it's very contradictory, and you can't have two people agree on what piece of content should get taken down. So a very thorny issue. But that's why they're saying, that's at least in my opinion, that's why they're saying, nope, we can do it. Don't worry about us. They don't want government regulation.
Robbie, how does the algorithm come into this conversation? And Kim, I'm curious for your take on this too, since you do so much work on YouTube. But there seems to be this contradiction between what they say publicly about content moderation and then what their algorithm does. In other words, if you put up a video that is skeptical of vaccine efficacy, it's probably going to do really, really well thanks to the YouTube algorithm. If you go beyond a certain line in what you say about vaccines, whether you're Rand Paul or somebody else, then boom, they nuke your site. So it's like they want you to, they're like incentivizing you to walk right up to this line. And then if you step over it, they're like, what, how dare you? What on earth are you doing? So I've been curious for both your reactions to that.
I mean, it's important to keep in mind that I believe there's 500 hours of new video content on YouTube every minute. And unlike, a site that's more, text or word based, it's easier to, I think, program through it or flag things more quickly. You actually have to just watch hours of YouTube content and then make some determination. So this is really hard to do at the scale at which YouTube operates. The one thing I'll say about the algorithm is that for a while, at least, there was this huge concern that the algorithm would be recommending more and more extreme videos to normal people who would be gradually driven insane by what the algorithm would then recommend that they watch. And then YouTube made some changes, and now, according to a lot of studies I've seen, that doesn't really happen. It's kind of a media panic that, oh no, what if my kid is just surfing YouTube and all of a sudden they're, raptured into the alt-right or something. I bet a similar thing is to some degree the case with coronavirus misinformation. Obviously, it's random. When they take down Rand Paul, I thought that was ridiculous. Some other people, but I think it's because they're too attuned to pressure that they get currently from this White House, which has made policing social media like its main job. It's baffling to me.
Yeah. I mean, I could say as a content creator and somebody who's had videos removed and who currently has a warning on my channel and has been just demonetized numerous times, have had videos demonetized numerous times, is that we as creators don't know. We don't know what is okay and what isn't okay. I can tell you that when it comes to vaccines, that no matter who you are, if you mention that word, even if you're Ben Shapiro, for example, who has a massive following on YouTube and gets hundreds of thousands of views per video, that if he mentions it at all, whether it be pro or against, it doesn't really matter. It pretty much the algorithm kills it. He doesn't get very many views on those videos. So there are certain topics that the algorithm just kills altogether. And the problem with creators is that we don't know what those what those topics are. Like, for example, there was we called it kind of like this progressive slaughter that happened February 2nd or 3rd of this year, where a ton of channels, a couple of dozen channels were demonetized. Progressive channels, leftist channels were demonetized, and nobody really was given a reason why they were demonetized. But it turns out that they were having discussions about January 6th and what had happened. And it didn't matter what their take was on it. They still were removed for even having the discussion or even, sort of tossing around some certain ideas, no matter what their personal views on it was. So that's kind of the problem that we face, is we don't know what is okay, what isn't okay. I do know that the algorithm no longer recommends independent news creators. It's pretty much, when you do a search, you're only getting mainstream establishment legacy media.
Well, and while critics have come out against YouTube for videos promoting hesitancy around masks and vaccines, Facebook recently revealed that one of its top performing links on the platform this year was an article raising concerns that the vaccine could be deadly, drawing criticism from President Biden and others who allege the company has allowed misinformation about the vaccines. So listen, this certainly isn't platform agnostic. It does seem that a lot of the major crackdowns that we've seen, both YouTube, Facebook, even Twitter, have been around vaccines and the coronavirus. But what do we foresee from a policy perspective? Is there another step coming from the Biden White House in this crackdown?
I certainly hope not. Again, I just said this, but I think the degree to which the Biden White House has fixated on Facebook and social media in general as the source of all its problems is, I guess it's too online, right? The smart thing Biden did was kind of ignore, people on Twitter in general when he ran his campaign. But now they're just very concerned about Facebook. And look, Facebook took down, very vigorously censored any discussion of the lab leak theory for months, largely at the behest of Fauci, the CDC, the White House. And then they get caught in this kind of embarrassing, they have to change the policy when now enough mainstream people think the lab leak theory is at least plausible enough to be, to be discussed, which I think is really embarrassing for the company. But again, it's not really Facebook's fault. The government is saying, we are going to come after you unless you make the content moderation decisions we want you to make. And they get support in that from the mainstream media. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN type people are obsessed with the idea of misinformation and constantly calling on social media sites to do more to take it down. So to some extent, they're scared. they're doing what this very powerful elite group of tattletales is telling them to do, and that's how it is.
Right. And that's the problem with it, is, like, for example, for me, I had 2 videos removed. One was removed, and it was because discussing the lab leak theory, and that wasn't allowed at the time that I was bringing it up. And then later, a video was removed for discussing the fact that that there were reports coming out that Pfizer's vaccine was causing some heart inflammation, some of the myocarditis, and that wasn't confirmed at the time. It was confirmed a month later. But even then, they still removed that video, saying, oh, no, that's unfounded. And so it seems like we're just going into this. You're only allowed to say it if the state sanctions it. You're not allowed to report even on reports of certain things happening that are truthful and honest. They're still saying, no way, we got to get rid of that. And you have to wait until we say it's okay to talk about this.
And how many times has that's so dangerous, because how many times has the government been wrong, either just because they didn't have all the information yet or because they deliberately lied? Anthony Fauci has admitted that he misled the public about what the herd immunity threshold might be because he was worried people wouldn't accept it. He was kind of, trying to tinker in that way. So when our health officials say sometimes they were deliberately not truthful with us, but they can get away with that. But anyone kind of having a free-range discussion gets labeled misinformation. Why is it? I live in Washington, D.C. I still see, I tweeted about this yesterday, like 20 to 40% of people walking around in masks outside, even though the health officials say there is no reason whatsoever to wear a mask when you're by yourself outside. Why doesn't that get considered misinformation? People don't learn it from Facebook. They, internalized it from bad health guidance or bad New York Times articles that they haven't gotten past. But nobody's freaked out about that misinformation.
And Robbie, is YouTube's motivation and the other social media platforms' motivation here in just censoring all conversation around a particular issue that related to what you said? There's 500 hours of new content going up every minute. It's just much safer to say, you know what, anything that touches on Q, January 6th, vaccines, whatever, and I just nuked this entire video, will just gets shut down immediately. Just better safe than sorry. Better censor everything than allow like one or two bad things to go through. When it seems like if they had their druthers, they would just have everybody on there playing Roblox and putting up videos, getting 10 and 20 million views on Minecraft or uncontroversial things like that. Is this how much of just a pure commercially driven decision-making process is this?
Well, there's other aspects to it too, right? Because these companies are disproportionately staffed by young, I would say woke liberal type person who is very, in step with what the kind of mainstream liberal media wants. And a lot of these companies face massive internal pressure from their own employees to do more of the kind of knee-jerk censorship of controversial or dissident topics. That's certainly been the case at Facebook. It's been the case at YouTube as well. So sometimes it's not even just like a commercial decision or even government feedback. It's the feedback from their own. They're worried, their companies are going. The people working at the company are going to try to destroy it unless they humor the kind of mainstream liberalish sensibility. This has been a huge problem. Right. The internal woke takeover that is not very tolerant of like dissenting a wide range of opinions. It has to be one opinion. And this has been a major problem at, kind of a lot of institutions, and social media has certainly been rocked by it. And that's actually probably an underrated cause of all this is
I know
the people in charge are afraid of these people.
Joe Rogan deals with that even at Spotify. That a lot of times the workers will rise up and say, we don't like that episode. We want you to do something about it. And it is because of that, what you're talking about, that sort of they don't maybe align ideologically with maybe his guest or what his topic was, and so they're calling for some censorship.
Right. And meanwhile, externally on Facebook, so many liberals have just fled the site since 2016, deactivated their accounts or just not participated like they used to, that then it just pushes all the conversation to the right, which then makes it less attractive for liberals to stay on, and they move, and more of them leave, and then it moves further to the right. And then you have this bizarre situation where you have conservatives saying that they're being censored, and you look at the top 10 videos, and it's all like Ben Shapiro and other.
Do you think, Ryan, do you think that a lot of the liberals have moved to Twitter and a lot of the conservatives are staying on Facebook? Do you think there's like a social media divide going on?
I don't know where all the liberals have gone.
I think they're on Twitter for sure.
Some of them have gone to Twitter, but it's not the most conducive site to normies. So. Facebook really is, well designed for that. So, it's worth looking at. Where have a lot of these liberals who have deactivated their Facebook accounts?
Well, and a lot of these kind of counter platforms have emerged as well. The Parlors of the world. Steve Bannon was demonetized and booted from YouTube, so he started his war room. So now there's all these sort of competing outside entities, which goes to Robbie's point that it's not purely a commercial interest that YouTube is doing this. In fact, they're losing viewership by doing it, and it's allowing these sort of next level platforms to spring up and emerge both on the right and the left.
Right.
But this is why I urge a lot of people on the conservatives are very concerned about big tech censorship. Many progressives, some like yourselves, are too. But I'm always trying to be careful because I actually think, despite the problems with these platforms and them making decisions I don't agree with, they are still, like you said, Facebook is the most powerful, enormous platform for right-wing content that has ever existed. So destroying Facebook, the Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz type people want to do that. It seems to me like the most self-defeating tactic for the right to pursue. Then you would just be left with the mainstream. The New York Times is never going to run an op-ed by a Republican again. And then you have Facebook that has, top 10 articles, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, Daily Wire, Tucker Carlson. Why would you want to destroy that? That's the stupidest thing you could do. And I think it's true also for dissident voices on the left. Despite how YouTube has treated people like our good friend Kim, it's still a better place for those conversations to happen than anything you would find in the mainstream media. Well,
Robbie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So coming up, journalist Zed Jelani discusses the altercation that took place between the Proud Boys and anti-fascists in Portland, Oregon over the weekend when Rising returns.